Good afternoon, ladies and gents, and welcome to another episode of The Price of Fame. My name is Lunga Chuka, and I'll be your host always. This is where you'll find me. Today's guest, ladies and gentlemen, is a retired basketball player turned broadcaster and has represented the country on the highest level for over a decade, with 2 years at the helm as captain. He's a commentator, analyst, and presenter on Supersport for the BNL as well as a varsity basketball. He's also a lead presenter for the he's also lead presenter for the NBA and SABC and forms part of the English commentary team for the it's for the Basketball Africa League. I knew I was gonna mess around. I was trying to get it right. For the Basketball Africa League. Without further ado, ladies and gents, please welcome to the screen. He go by the name of Quintin Denyssen.
I feel like we have a live studio audience, Lunga. Nice one. How are you doing?
I'm good, thanks, and you? How are you doing, brother?
I'm never complaining. It's always a pleasure. It's different to be on the other side. I prefer your seat than the one that I'm currently in, if I'm being honest.
Yeah. I mean, you that guy now. You having being interviewed by me, so I hope I do well, seeing that I'm doing interviewing a professional on the side.
I'm sure you're going to have no problems whatsoever. I actually find it more difficult to talk about self than actually investigating, individuals. And I think it's actually a little bit easier to be in your seat than to be in this one here. So let's hope I do all right too on this side.
Well, my man, that's interesting. Well, I think you're gonna do amazing. You're gonna do amazing. I mean, you're used to this kind of thing, so like, yeah, I don't have any doubts that this is gonna be a cool conversation. So yeah, let's get into it. So first things first, how did this all start for you with the whole basketball playing and all of that? When did it all begin? Like, when did the bug bite you? How old were you? Where'd you come from? Can you please paint the picture of your journey from the beginning up until roughly now where you are?
Well, I mean, my journey, I guess it's an interesting one. Everybody's got an interesting story, right? And it's always fun to try and unpack the detail. I'm a Joburg-born individual, so I've spent my entire life in the city of Johannesburg. Initially out in the West Rand in a smaller township called Bosmont, and then I moved to Boksburg on the East Rand. I guess a lot of my sport background comes from that. We were in a reasonably good position. My parents could and were able to put us into public school. I've just got a younger brother. I mean, into private school, and I guess my love for sport came from that. So it was a traditional boys' school, a school called Christian Brothers College. It's out in Boksburg, CBC for short. All boys' school, and if you know anything about unisex schools, I mean, single-sex schools is that tradition and sport play a big part of the culture. So, like most South African kids, rugby and cricket and a little bit of athletics and then a little bit of soccer formed a predominant part of my association with playing sport, understanding the role of sport that was going to be in my life. And I was pretty good at those things. So I played provincial rugby. So I went to Craven Week and I played a little bit of provincial cricket as well. I was Sasa under 17 and then I used to swim. So and I didn't do too badly at academics. But my love for basketball, I think my dad was in a position to foster some of our interests. And the one thing about my parents is that, they never dictated which direction you must take. They rather looked at the direction you're going and try to support whichever direction you took, as long as you tried to investigate it and you showed passion towards it. But we had a hoop at home that I used to play with my brother. That one-on-one competition. It's always, you hear a lot of great sportsmen talk about the brotherly rivalry. So a lot of that happened there with our hoop. We used to play our own sports championships, and that coupled with the basketball coverage at the time, it was on our local public broadcasters that I now work for. But that's where they knew how to make the game appealing. So you watched the ads, and they used to have this ad. The NBA used to have this ad called "I Love This Game." They used to show different types of slam dunks and show different players. And I remember my first association with liking a player was probably Dominic Wilkins, who played for the Atlanta Hawks at that time. But, he was a high flyer. And there was something about the way that they positioned him or the way they played the game that got me involved. And I actively got involved in the club structure when I was 16 years old. So I started legitimately playing basketball when I was 16. or maybe just like in a formal club structure, actually learning the rules and understanding what it means to play for a team. I made a provincial team by the time I was 18, and I made the national team. I made that under 18 national team, getting into the squad first, and then our first travel was to Egypt, and I think that's where it was cemented. Like that was it, because I played provincial rugby, provincial cricket. I knew how difficult it is to get into a national team. The minute I made a South African national team at junior level, I think, and then the opportunity to travel to Egypt to go and play basketball. Yeah, I think that was all she wrote for me, and that the rest, as they say, is history. And there's a lot that I can go into in depth around that.
That's so awesome, man. And when you eventually retired from being a basketball player and you moved to broadcasting, how would you say in in many ways, or maybe two or a simple way, that how did that shift for you affect your life, your career in terms of that, and also your perspective on the game when you started moving and started because now you're outside of the game and now you get to commentate on games and it's always different from in the game and looking from the outside. So how did that kind of like affect your perspective on the game, actually, and also like with your career, like how did that also affect you?
So I mean, I this is a lesson in goal setting, and it's probably something that will come up later in our conversation. But I probably set my goals too low in terms of what I would like to attain from a game of basketball, and it's always something that I do speak about freely when people do ask, right? And I just wanted to be the most recognized local basketball player when I was playing, and then during my career, and I think at some level I achieved that without a doubt. Right? But knowing that the to get into the NBA is really tough, and it was even tough back then. You're one of 420 odd players that get the chance to play on that stage, and then every year there's 60 out and 60 in, regardless of what happens. So it shows you how small the percentages are. You consider that it could be a populace of about 500 million, half a billion, or slightly more guys actively playing the game. Then you start to understand what excellence looks like. But for me, the transition to broadcasting was a choice. The Basketball National League had just come back. I was involved with the administration of a team. There was they are now what you call the Limpopo Pride, but it was Polo Quality Trailblazers when we had administrated the actual team. And the choice was to play for my team or to get involved with broadcasting, which I kind of chased, but I really just wanted to be in an analyst role because I knew that I'd be pretty good, looking at the game. I played the game at the highest levels. I competed in Africa for over a decade. So, I have insights. I've got the experience of being under different coaches of different nationalities. So I thought that I could definitely add something. And I'm not too badly spoken. I was probably a little bit too shy back then, if I'm being really honest. And you can ask any of my former teammates. This is the ability to speak to you comfortably now and just address people in the room has taken some time. The overcoming shyness and overcoming they say the number one fear that most people have is public speaking, and it's there for a reason. I had that fear, and finding the ways to express yourself comfortably in a room full of strangers, and then them actually taking note. Took some time. So if you have, and I'm sure there's some archive footage, I always tell people I feel sorry for the people who listen to me because we started in 2013 this journey of broadcasting, and we had some really good training and the opportunity to learn. But it was bad. I can tell you that actively. You hear some amateurs going at it. It's what amateurs should sound like if they're learning about the commentary game for the first time, and the transition from understanding what commentators actually do to just talking to pictures took some time, and then actually learning and becoming skilled in the trade. There's no better way to learn than to jump in the pool, as they say, sink or swim. I started out doggy style, doggy paddle, rather, and to move into actual strokes and freestyle, and then learning that you can actually swim and keep afloat. So it's really, I think that transition wasn't so difficult because I've been in the game and I've played for so long, and I had good relationships with a lot of the players and the coaches, and then just getting them to trust me to be able to communicate their vision and mine. That's taken some time, but I'm in a good place now.
Well, that's amazing. I mean, a lot of things that I'm doing now today, I also kind of like just threw myself in the deep end, and then you learn as you grow. You learn as you go on the journey. And that's amazing. I think it's also one of the best ways to learn also because you're you in the moment, there's no time to read about or whatever. You need to figure it out now and you kind of find out your strengths and weaknesses as well in those moments. So I truly appreciate that. And do you feel that in your own experience, do you feel that in comparison now to other basketball leagues and how other countries support basketball, do you feel that in SA that they be kind of lacking some kind of support in some kind of areas where it comes to basketball?
It's such a difficult question because I have to go back into the history of the game and then draw out certain aspects where we've probably failed the game, but where administration has failed the game. And if there's one thing about South African sport that is probably our biggest crux and our Achilles tendon across many platforms is sports administration. The long and the short of it is that where American sport and where most sports in countries where they are successful, what they do right is that they understand that the athlete is the primary is your primary product. When you look at South African sport, the fact that we can still name sports administrators is a problem to me. Sports administrators are supposed to do what they're supposed to do behind the scenes. If you're really efficient, really great at administrating the sport, you will get you'll get your recognition in terms of long service, and you'll be able to showcase what your abilities were during your tenure when you look back in hindsight. But they're still too front and center, and I think that's a big problem with South African sport in general, is that we have to narrate and speak to and about our heroes, and our heroes are there front and center. They are our product. When you think about soccer or cricket or back in the 90s and early 2000s, we had prominent heroes because they were front and center and they were actual products. I mean, think about the fact that and I don't want to mention soccer because it's a basketball conversation, and I always like keeping my basketball conversations basketball, but when I started playing soccer, they were Dr. Kumalo and Jomo Sono Puma soccer boots for sale. They were brands. They were household names before social media existed, right? And it's almost rare to see that now for any soccer player or any basketball or any prominent cricketer to just have their name or on a brand. It's almost unthinkable, and it shouldn't be that way because this is the country that they're from, and these are the people that support them the most. So the association should exist, and therein, if I bring it back to basketball, is also the problem is that we've had bad administration. There is not a lack of support or skills set or expertise, but the administration has lost the trust of the general public and sponsors, and earning back that trust takes a lot. And sometimes it might require change of leadership, and might have to look at our external structures, the governing bodies, to come in and apply some change management and look at how you can then revitalize the sport. But change needs to happen because the professional league is not where it should be, and basketball in the country is not where it should be right now. But there's so much interest. Without a doubt, if you go to any high school or varsity tournaments, you will understand and see that the love for the game is thriving. And the Basketball Africa League on the continent is already starting to re-spark their interest. And, that is part and parcel of what this product is. And if you've been in the game for as long as we've been, and it's been here for about 20 plus years, you really just want to see the game grow. And highlighting faults and figuring out solutions is probably the best way to go about it.
Absolutely. I mean, that's how we recognize what is wrong and what we need to change, and how we can actually move forward. So that's very, very key important. Have you ever considered coaching basketball, or do you not have time for that?
I coached a local high school, King Edward High School. They're quite prominent here in Johannesburg. I coached them for 6 years. The program grew while I was there. By the time I left, we had 1.5 basketball courts. By the time that my tenure ended, which was 6 years, there were 4 basketball courts. They were still outdoors, but I always look at that as a legacy. But the one thing that it did also teach me is that coaching is a passion. It's not a job. You can't just go ahead and coach. Never mind the knowledge transfer in terms of sports skills. That's a small part of what coaching is. Coaching is actually, you're molding the psychology of young men. You're teaching them to lose. You're teaching them about winning. You're teaching them about discipline and goal setting. And in many ways, you're a role model. You're a friend. You're a mentor. You're a psychologist. You're also a physical trainer, and then you're a tactician. It's not just the word coach. Coaching is very difficult. I think, if anything, I would go back into skills training because I've got skills that I'd like to impart. But in order to be a coach, you'd actually have to give up your time, and that's why coaching is a career, and it's not something that I can do at this point because I'm an entrepreneur, I'm a broadcaster, and it's a choice that I've made actively. And maybe later on, I don't know, 10 years from now, if I look back and I've got some time, maybe I'll get into a phase where I can help mold the minds of young men and young women and see what that would look like.
Yeah, that's really awesome. And you mentioned earlier that your parents were kind of like very supportive in terms of like you go the direction that you feel comfortable in and we'll support you. So have you had like any challenges maybe in your youth days, especially in the beginning of your career, maybe in your community or amongst your peers?
I don't know about challenges so much. Like I said, I was fortunate. Even even though the spaces that we grew up in, if you look at it, technically it could be called a township. My parents try to shield me as much and my brother as much from any adverse circumstances as possible. Adversity, I guess, looks different for different people, but the hardest thing is, when you fail to attain a goal that you set for yourself, right? Disappointment comes, and it's one thing that I think it's a recurrent theme that's happened over the last month, is that the one thing that sports does teach you is how to lose and how to recover from that loss. And the second thing that it teaches you is, victory is also just temporary. You work so hard to get to win a championship. You work so hard, you put in all the hours necessary, but when you get there, you get a chance to just appreciate the work that you get. You get the recognition for the hard work, and then realize that you've actually got to go back and work harder because now people want that title from you. So it's short-lived. You get to look back. It's like a notch in the belt, but then all of a sudden, you're back into a new season where you ultimately might even have to work harder because you can't rest on your laurels. People now want the title that you have. So sport teaches you that there is no real off periods. We're kind of in this for the long run, especially if you're committed to developing your skill set, and also just never mind the values that come with working within a team, depending on the sports that you're into. And basketball is really great for that. And then there's the understanding that work gives you hard work will give you the results that you're looking for if you stay committed to it. Basketball is also really, really great at that. And then the other part of that is that if you're committed to something, if you're committed to the game, then you must consider what that would mean, because it's lifestyle. It's literally a choice that helps define and determine how you're seeing who you are, and working within that team structure. Then sometimes you have to sacrifice a role that you think that you deserve in order to see the entire team or organization win. There's just so much there.
You mentioned the word now, sacrifice is what I was actually thinking now. With the success of your career, with taking up a lot of your time and being and having to do what you have to do, what are some of the sacrifices in your personal life that you felt like you couldn't attend weddings, you had to sacrifice friendships, or have you had any of those sacrifices that you had to do for your job or because of your career and because of your success?
I don't think you can have a conversation with any sports person who's achieved any level of success without talking about sacrifice. You know that public holidays are not public holidays. You know that holidays are not holidays. You know that family days are not family days, because you're trying to always imagine that your competitor is working harder than you. So you do sacrifice days, personal sacrifices in terms of relationships. Sometimes you've got to you've got to take care of your diet and your body. That's a sacrifice because you're giving up some junk food or some temporary enjoyment for something that is on the horizon and not in front of you right there. And then there's also the very real possibility that all that sacrifice could lead to you getting the moment that you want and then missing. Do you know what I'm saying? You practice a whole 5 years. The Olympics is a great example of that. You practice or you train for 4 years for a shot that you hope that you're going to get, and then you do get the opportunity and miss. And now that's 4 years down the drain. How do you deal with that disappointment, right? I've missed many shots myself. I've missed game-winning shots. I've made game-winning shots, and there are two sides of it. And sometimes you don't get the recognition or the award that you want, but you also start to find that the work that you put in, or you look back at the journey and allow that hindsight to help you again feel some sort of self-worth, and then just also gives you a sense of comfort knowing that you've put the work in, and some of the results are showing you might not got what you want, but you can still be proud of the work that you put in, I suppose.
And in your own life, personally in your journey, have you ever had like a turning point where your life just like kind of like took a complete 360 or 180 and just started, you just started, usually like what I mean, like sometimes when people have like a close to death experience, or when they have like maybe a firstborn, or maybe when they lose someone and then their life just changes completely. Have you ever had some kind of turning point like that in your journey?
No doubt. We all face adversity. I think you don't even have to look too far, right? I mean, I can go back to some trigger events where that has happened, but if you look at what's happened in the last 2 years, COVID if COVID had not affected you as an individual, as a sports person, as anything, then you've pretty much, I think you're going against the grain, right? We were challenged in terms of what your routines look like, in terms of what your career is going to be. And I'm going to use that because it's the most recent example. Because when you're sitting stagnant at home and you're not able to get out and do the things that you love and enjoy, it starts to make an impression in terms of your thought processes, and then you start questioning: am I really on the right path? Is this the legacy that I want to leave? Understanding that we understand we got a real insight and real stark reminder of how thin the string of life is, because loved ones left us. Friends, peers, family members, and then you start questioning your own existence and what it actually means to be out here, right? And it did the same for me. So now I'm like, okay, well, what am I trying to do? Is broadcasting, and do I want to be remembered as a sports commentator? Because once your sports career is over, and once you start looking at, I still try and go and play, Premier League games, or when I get out on the court, but it's not the same. It's not when I'm not 20 anymore. The body doesn't react the same way. You're a lot slower. You don't put the time in, the work in on the practice court, and you can't expect the same results. So I'm not playing at the same level. So now my whole paradigm has shifted in terms of who I am and what I am and what I'm trying to do. So then that is the satisfaction. Does this really work for me? When I look back, they always say, it's a saying that I use, but when your life movie flashes in front of your eyes, are you going to be happy with the real? And if you're not happy with the real, what are you doing right now to ensure that that real is what you want it to be? And that period in COVID helped reassure that I'm happy with my real. But there's some things that I still need to do to ensure that the real is and will always be what I want it to be, because you're present in every moment. The decisions that you're making now are kind of like a mixture between hindsight and future. And then, social media spoils it a little bit. So I always get caught up in the fact that I don't want to record the moment, but our current culture means that you have to record the moment in order for it to have existed or happened. But in days gone past, memory is good enough. The fact that you can just go back and record it and recount it. There doesn't have to be footage of everything that happens in order for it to have happened. And I struggle with that a little bit. But at the same time, we have to accept that these are the life and times and the way that the world is starting to work. And we are more and more virtual every day. And I work in a space, I work in tech a bit that keeps reminding me that I'm going to be playing a part in some of that narrative too.
Mm-hmm. And in the area that you grew up in, were you ever faced with challenges like in the surrounding areas like gangsterism, drugs, alcohol abuse, and all of those things? Were that ever prominent in your area? Did that ever like become something that you had to like face or had to fight or get away from when you were growing up?
Um, yes and no, because you know what? I played or my dad started a community club team where we were at. It was called the ERPM, which was East Rand Proprietary Mine Limited. So we used some of the mine fields close by, and seeing gangsterism, alcohol abuse, sometimes drugs, but we had a positive spin on it because we had this club and it was run by literally fathers in the community, and they used their cars and their resources to register a club and to train local kids. And I was local, so to train all of us, they did the best that they could in terms of just running a community-based club and ensuring that we compete against kids from different circumstances in local league. But my challenges weren't theirs. I lived in the same community, but I went to a different school. So in that, you also face some segregation. You're part of the community, but you're not really, because you're slightly different. You're not necessarily exposed to the same level of whether either it's substance abuse or drinking is in colored communities everywhere. Drugs are in colored communities everywhere. It's not a unique challenge, or access to it is also not difficult because we have our local shopping center, or there's a local park, and what happens on a Sunday. It's almost like a universal rule in township, but that's what it is. Our culture is built around drinking and music, and then a little bit of substance abuse, and then misogyny. It's who we are. It's part of the narrative that we can kind of change. But if you try and tell a story from a township, it's almost like you can replicate it across different townships because we think we're different. But you go there, you go like, well, we do this in our hood too. So those challenges are not universal. They are something that I was faced with. I only started consuming alcohol when I was 18 years old, just around my matric here. I would later work in the alcohol industry, so I understand all the ills of the alcohol industry. And I can never, say that I didn't advocate the use of it, but I didn't face any challenges with regards to it because I don't have an addictive personality, but I know what it can do to individuals who have addictive personalities. And I'm blessed and grateful that I did not have to go through those challenges because, one, my personality didn't allow it. I always was well read and tried to stay well informed. And that stuff actually scared the hell out of me because, the fear factor in terms of what happens if I get addicted, it was well communicated, and they made sure that I stayed away from it altogether.
Awesome. Yeah, no. I've lost a lot of friends along that path, that have, and they can't come back. So yeah, no, it's definitely a scary path to go down, and not something that you go and experiment. So you have to like have your books like you have to know about it before that the temptation even comes to you. So yeah, that's crazy. And like, what is the highest ranking or status that you could reach as a basketball player?
I honestly believe that getting a spot on an NBA team is the highest ranking. It also, it depends on your value system. For guys representing your country, it really is. It's an honor badge, something that you wear with, great aplomb. You're one of 12 to 15 guys that are the best at their sporting code in your respective country. But as far as basketball accolades are concerned, like I said, those 420 spots or 420 odd spots in the NBA, apart from the guaranteed finance, because should you get that spot, you are a dollar multimillionaire almost instantaneously. That is the highest ranking. Just the pride and prestige and understanding how difficult it is numerically. It's almost like winning the lottery just to get into that space. I think it's second to none in terms of basketball achievement. a lot of leagues will then replicate. If you get a spot on the Euro League or now the Basketball Africa League, which is growing, it really does matter. But the NBA still remains the pinnacle and premier product in terms of basketball worldwide.
Have you played in different kind of countries as well with competing with basketball? And if yes, what was your experience like playing with those different guys? Because sometimes maybe, for example, let's say the Asians, they're very fast, and they're good with the dribbling and all of that. And some other guys have something special there. So in your experience, if you've played with other countries, what did you take from these countries that you felt, this is something I would take and incorporate with my skills as well?
I mean, the question itself, I played for 11 years, right? And I represented the country. The one thing basketball didn't give was finance. But the other thing that it gave that you can't pay for is travel experience. I got to go to 3 World Student Games. So that's Student Olympics. And we got to compete. I got to go to all Africa Games. I think it was 3 times. If I go back, my memory doesn't serve me. I competed in African Championships multiple times. And that's on my ability to shoot and bounce a basketball. And that's the kind of alluding to your question is that's the great thing about it, the great leveler. You know what? It's not English, it's not music, it's not anything else. It's just bouncing a ball and putting it through a hoop, and the language is the same. They are different styles. The World Student Games, when I talk about experiences money can't buy, that student village is 8,000 to 9,000 athletes, all within like a square mile, all driven with the same purpose to try and pick up a gold medal in their respective disciplines. So now you're in a village with like-minded people from across the world. Can you imagine, over 100 odd countries, all within a square mile? You just walk and, you're either seeing an athlete that you know, or you're not seeing an athlete that you know, but you're seeing all of these different sports from badminton all the way down to whatever Z is, and they're there for the same purpose, to just represent their country with pride. So I was very blessed in that regard, and you can't but not learn. So you have access to cultures, you have access to what competition looks like. And I say this because, we didn't win too much. Basketball is challenging to get into at the very least, but a lot of these top tier countries, like our soccer, like everything else, they train from very young at an elite level. So just being on a court sometimes and being able to put up a decent score and not get beaten by too much was a win for us in certain things. But that's a recognition of where the sport was at the time. But can I take those experiences back? No. And would I want to? Absolutely not. You learn how it is. Like I said, you learn to lose, and you learn to understand that every loss is a lesson, and whatever lessons you're going to take from this, hopefully help you become a better player and a better person. And if they don't, the universe and the game will teach you the hard way those lessons, because the universe has a habit of repeating lessons until you learn, which is supposed to learn. Throughout my career, the limited success we had as a South African basketball team and the lots of losses were still great, because there's a universal African network, depending on if that's the purpose. Sometimes you get focused too much on the game and forget to live in the moment and enjoy it. And that was probably when you're a little bit younger and hyper competitive. But as you get older, you actually start to just feel like, look, winning is important, but there's a chance to connect with guys from different countries here, because you build lifelong friendships, and I have some lifelong friendships because of the game, and I'm very grateful for them.
And with the game of basketball, like, what are some of the most severe injuries you could get in basketball? I don't know. Could it be something just like twisting your ankle, or could be some more severe injuries that you can actually get in basketball? I mean, in your experience, what have you seen or heard of so far? And are there any long-term effects? Like, for example, with boxing, too many games if someone boxes for such a long time, later on in their life, they usually have problems with their mobility, and then they have some Parkinson's disease, or like Muhammad Ali, later on in his life, he couldn't move around and help himself that much, So are there any long-term injuries that one person, especially someone who maybe doesn't train that well or doesn't eat that well, and puts himself through a lot of basketball games, and that is there long-term injuries that will show up later on in your life? And during the game, what is the most severe injury that you can actually obtain?
I mean, basketball is physical. If you look at the longevity of basketball players, it says that if you take care of your body, because it's almost a whole body sport, right? So you got to take care of your core. Obviously, the joints that will experience the most wear and tear are your knees and your ankles, because there's a lot of running and a lot of jumping. So later on in life, those are the primary areas that can experience some sort of debilitation. So walking becomes a little bit harder, depending on how much wear and tear you put on your knees. So you probably won't be doing any of that in your late 50s or 60s, just depending on the conditions that you, the amount of conditioning that you put in and the amount of wear and tear that you applied on your body, and also the way that you took care of it in terms of recuperation. In the basketball in-game injuries, I've seen, we fortunately you can get paralyzed because guys jump, and if they undercut you, you can fall. And I've seen that happen. That's why training guys to understand to control their bodies is very important, because you have no control once you're in the air. If someone knocks you mid-air, then you'll see very skilled professionals know how to compete like that, but also you can get hurt like that. Broken ankles, broken knees, elbows to the face, broken noses, those can be common occurrences just depending on where and how you're playing. Because elbow swing, foot, you can put your foot in the path of a guy who's jumping to take a shot. He can land on your ankle. He can land on your foot, and then he can do his ankle. It just depends. But obviously, in the spirit of sportsmanship and the game, we try and avoid these things. But they can happen. I've had a cut on the eye, and I've had a broken nose playing against different teams in Africa. It can get a bit rough out there, honestly.
Crazy. I thought you could just split your ankle, twist your ankle, something like, not split your ankle, but twist your ankle. I thought that's that's probably the worst, because you're bouncing the ball. But obviously I've seen so many times where they elbow jab you, if people want to play dirty, you can really get hurt out there, And like you also mentioned some of the injuries that you've gotten, wow, even to the point of getting a cut in the face. And also I always see sometimes in basketball when they're playing, when they bounce the ball, then they bounce it in someone's face and then they continue bouncing. Is that allowed? Is that allowed, like, just to mess with your person?
Absolutely allowed. You can bounce it off the face, but just don't be surprised with the reaction that you're going to get from that player. There's a lot that referees also don't see, and you'll see experienced players take those moments, and just like you see soccer guys, sports is entertainment. People come to watch you play. It's escapism from your life. So if you can create the hero villain scenario, cool, then do that. Go do it, because you are either a hero or a villain in someone's story, and the primary role is to entertain. So if you get involved behind your team and you can see a player that you dislike or one of your hero players go down, it's all a part of the story. It's all a part of your escapism for that night. But it's obviously to our detriment as players on the floor.
Yeah. What are some of your most iconic moments that you've ever had in your career that you feel like, wow, I wouldn't mind reliving that again?
If I go back, we South Africa, like I said, we struggled on the international stage, but 2003, when we beat Senegal in Egypt in the African Championships, and Senegal were and are still basketball powerhouses. That was one of the best moments on a basketball court, because we led that game from start to finish. Our coach was a US-based coach who came out here, a guy called Sam Vincent. He actually married a girl from Cape Town out there, and he was in charge of the professional back in the PBL, Professional Basketball League days. He was part of the franchise down in Cape Town. The Cape Town, they're now called the Mountaineers, but they weren't called that back in the day. But yeah, when he was the coach, leading from start to finish, our team probably one of our best games of team basketball that I've had the chance to be a part of. We executed just so well, and it's one of my favorite moments on the basketball court, because we all played a role. we basically overcame all odds, and that was just to win a group game, but it was fantastic. And you got to, like I said, you got to take the wins where they come. Winning local league games and achieving MVP awards, those all matter, but not so much when it's country. And it's always different when you're wearing green and gold and you're going up against the best in the world and the best on the continent, and then you actually beat them. And remember that we were largely amateurs competing against professionals, so those wins mean even more, even when you do get them, because you first have to learn how to lose, and then you appreciate so much more when you get those wins, and that moment stands out. And then just in terms of broadcasting, every chance I get to do the Basketball Africa League, it's actually surreal, because like I told you, 2013 when I started out this journey. Now I'm doing. I started out doing the local professional basketball league. Now I'm out working on the continent as one of, like I said, only 3 voices involved in the only league to be backed by the NBA outside of North America, and arguably, one of the fastest growing leagues in the world. And that's my voice out there. It's crazy. To me, it's surreal. And doing the final this year was probably a highlight in my camp, and something that I look back at very fondly already. And it happened just almost a month ago.
Do you have any worst experience that you like I wouldn't wish on my worst enemy that that anyone has ever have to experience what I had to experience in your career? Whether maybe the people treated you unfairly or anything that you maybe brought on yourself, or just something that you experienced that you feel like, this is probably the worst experience ever.
It's difficult to answer that, because when you're being well coached, or when you have a sportsman's mentality, you learn not to focus on these things, because they kind of like a watershed. I don't know if watershed is right, but it's like water off your back, water off a duck's back. It happened. Oh my goodness! All right, let's keep it moving. There are no big moments that you look back on, because those moments can either make or break your mental as a sports person, and you try not to just focus in on. But I don't know if I've had too many terribly embarrassing moments. There were a couple of moments where you just overcommit on the court. But did they cause trauma? I wouldn't wish that on anybody else. There's always embarrassing things that happen, like a fall. But I do remember there was a game we played. We played against Zambia in Zimbabwe, and we were playing in a defensive set. It was a zone guy threw a fake pass. I turned around, literally. He made the shot. It was quite embarrassing. I wouldn't wish that on a basketball player. That can happen. But later on in the game, I came down the floor, and I threw a no-look alley-oop to a guy who was trailing, and that was my little quick win that turned that little piece of adversity into a little bit of showtime. Probably wouldn't have done it if that didn't happen to me. But yeah, it was embarrassing, and I think that's probably it. As far as broadcasting goes, like I said, I've had to fail. I've had to fail hard. Even you can just go back earlier, and you're here. And I'm not sure that it exists. I hope it doesn't. But if it does, those moments were tough, because you don't like to hear or see the criticism. And social media is so quick to remind you whether you're doing well or not. And the one thing about commentary is that it's kind of like refereeing. If you're doing a great job, sometimes people won't just say anything, because you're just doing what's expected, right? Sometimes they will acknowledge, and that's also great. When you get acknowledgement, you accept it and you appreciate it, and you keep it moving. Never too high and never too low.
So, is something that you are like extremely passionate about that nobody actually knows? Like, for example, like maybe you're really passionate about cooking, or maybe you're really passionate about playing the bass. Do you have some of those hidden talents that people don't really know of, that you kind of somehow feel like you're so connected to it? Like, if you were to look into an alternative universe, and you would see yourself actually doing that, living that life, or in a past life, maybe you were a chef or something like. Is there something like that you feel like you're extremely passionate about that no one else knows, or that you kind of play low, or like you feel so connected to?
I don't know if it would have been another career per se, but I do like the chef vibe. I enjoy time in front of the stove, and can get quite creative out there. We like to eat well, and I always say, you can create the meal that's in your head, and it tastes the way that you want it to taste, then you've done that pretty good. I also believe in a past life I was probably a philosopher, maybe a little bit of a psychologist. I do enjoy, insights into the human psyche, and looking at the way that we think, what triggers us, how we think, read, react. You know, it's great. I used to read quite a bit. I probably scaled back on it because now that we are part of the rat race, you have to find and pick your moments to do that. And I'm very passionate about tech, right? So I probably should have been an esports gamer. That's probably the right one. If I could choose something, I would just be, a career gamer. That would be a lot of fun because that's actually an option now. Back in our day when you started playing games, your mom was like, this is not going to get you anywhere. It's not going to do anything. Now these guys earn just as big paychecks from sitting there in front of a screen playing some games. And I used to think I'm a gamer, but I know I'm not that much anymore. I still do game, but that one, yeah. If I could, that would probably be another chosen career path because it's just as competitive, and the way that these game designers have come up with the way that they create these surreal environments, it feels like you're playing sport. And they found a way to just tap into the psychology of what sport is, and also visually they make it as entertaining as anything. So yeah, I think that kind of answers that.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I was also surprised. I think I saw one gamer competition, and the prizes are big. They win big money when they go to these tournaments. So they can really actually make, like you said, you make a career of it and even do reviews on the games. Like I spoke to another influencer or content creator, and she's also a gamer now, because she partner up with this brand and they just send the games and do reviews, and she gets paid for that. So she just plays games and review it. And also they have these pop-up setups in the mall and that kind of thing. She just has to be part of all of that and all of that. So that, like you're saying, it's actually something that kids and a lot of people, not just kids, actually a lot of people, if you're really into it, you can actually make a career of it. And people also know you and get ranks also in all of that. It's crazy.
Well, the funny thing is back to basketball, right? And NBA has got an esports division. They've got franchises, just like they do in the real world. And they go ahead and they have drafts every year too. So if you get one of those, you can earn up to 50,000 US dollars a month as a gamer. I mean, that's crazy. Is it crazy to me? Like, okay, you see how you're going? It's exactly that. For playing basketball virtually.
My word.
Audience, they have skilled athletes, and they have an annual competition. So you've got teams that then canvas and look for skilled up and coming gamers to be a part of this. I don't even want to go into those Fortnite competitions where they just had a million. Was it $1 million or was it a $3 million winner? Obviously, your chances of winning are slim, just like it is in any competition. But it exists and it's there, and just emphasizing that maybe look, it's not too late now. Maybe I can still, but you need hours. you need some hours out there. They spend an obscene amount of hours in front of a screen, and I'm not sure I'm willing to do that. I'm old school. I like to be out playing some sport.
Wow, that's crazy. I mean, that's really crazy. Did you say 15 or did you say $50,000 a month?
50, and it goes up.
Just for being a really good gamer. Oh, that's crazy. That's crazy. Yes, I should have kept the game because I left gaming behind. I should have stuck with it because wow, I mean, like you're saying, I mean, I want to teach my kid. Teach me, listen, play these games. You're gonna make money. All right, Quintin, brings me to my final question. Thank you so much for giving so much knowledge on your craft and what you're passionate about. And I've learned so much just speaking about basketball, and I've learned so much about you as well. And for my final question, this is the question that I ask all my guests, and if I were to put you in a time machine and I were to dial it back to a younger version of yourself, a younger version of Quintin, maybe in a time where you felt you needed some guidance or some advice, and it's the Quintin of today, having walked the journey that you've walked, the wisdom, all the sacrifices and everything, all the achievements where you are today. And you have 5 minutes with a younger version of yourself to give yourself a little bit of some words of encouragement. What would that be?
Man, when I look back, I don't think that there's anything that I want to say right now. But if it's just universal advice, and if we're trying to craft some sort of life philosophy, because like I said, COVID taught me quite a bit, and regret is not one of the things that goes well with the philosophy of life. I'd just be like, you know what? It's not that deep. It's not that serious. Life is not lived forward or backwards. It's actually being present and appreciating the moment. It's great to have plans. If the plans fall through, just readapt, but always understand what the end goal is, because failure is not that so serious. Neither is success, and it goes back to the theme that we spoke about a little bit earlier. So to young me, it would be, understand the work that it's going to take in order for you to get there. Be prepared to put in those hours, because the long hours do pay off eventually. You just have to stay driven, stay motivated, and keep your eyes on the prize, because at the end, there is light at the end of the tunnel. You just have to continue to work your way through the mud, the dredge, and even when it's downhill, take it in, but know that it's temporary, but the goal will be reached.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. I love that. I love that so much. Listen, Quintin, is there anything that you feel like I didn't give you the opportunity to share that you probably want to share in this conversation now? That maybe now's the time if you'd like to do that.
I was thinking about that, and you spoke about an adverse event, and that yesterday I was just having a conversation with a friend of mine, and one of the adverse events is that I lost two best friends. I mean, we spoke about growing up, but I lost two best friends in the later part of my life. So at varsity, and then just a little bit later on, you don't understand, or maybe there's something that you don't get in terms of companionship and friendships that are almost tantamount to family. When you lose those companions, or when you lose besties, those are adverse life events that you look at. And one thing that COVID reminded us of, and I talked about that thin string that we hold on to in terms of life, was that. And I think grief and trauma are forming a large part of the narrative of where we are now in life, and dealing with loss is forming a large part of what we have to go through as this COVID generation. I had to learn some of those lessons a little bit earlier in life. So, just being a little bit more compassionate, appreciating the journey of your friends, helping where you can, just remind you to stay present in the moment, appreciating moments with people that matter. And the other favorite saying is that lost time can't be found. So you have to consider the time that you spend with the people that you want to spend it with. And that's probably the only other message that I want to get out before we close this off.
Thank you so much. It's a beautiful message. I truly, truly love that message. Thank you so much, Quintin, for that. For people, for especially some of my followers or the people who are tuning in here who was not following you on your page just yet, could you please drop all of your social handles so that we can be part of? Is there anything that you also event that you're looking forward to that we could possibly, I don't know, attend or something like that? If there's anything like that, you can drop that social handles right now.
All right. Yeah, my socials real simple. QD4. So Quintin Denyssen. I used to be number 4 when I played on Twitter. QD for life on Instagram. Those are my primary socials. I don't really accept strangers on Facebook, so don't try me. I'll just I'll see your request and ignore you. So my apologies for that one. Maybe I should open up one of those other pages. And then I've got a website that I run. It's called Full Court Press. It's also my radio show, where I've got an author, a partner. His name's Leonard Mbulenzi. We write articles about basketball. So fullcourtpress.co.za is where we at. If you want to just get some unique insights on South African and African basketball, We do kind of publish articles monthly. And sometimes we do a little bit more. We'll do a little bit more because there's a window coming up now. There's a World Cup qualifying window for African basketball happening 1st through to the 3rd of July in 3 different countries. So we'll cover some of that, just give you some insights, and we keep you up to date with all of the local, international, and African basketball news, NBA included. Try to focus on African basketball because that's my pride, that's my passion, it's where I'm most comfortable. So hit me up any one of those social media spots, and then happy to keep you involved with the game, and also my own unique insights with a variety of guests.
Awesome stuff. Thank you so much, Quintin. Thank you for agreeing to be a guest. Thank you for all the information and such a valuable conversation that you had with me today. I truly, truly appreciate it. Yeah, we've come to the end of the interview, and I really had a good time with you. Thank you so much for joining and being a guest.
Thank you so much, Lunga. Thank you. You know, I love the platform. I love the work that you guys are doing. It's important to tell stories. It's important to keep it motivational. Also part of a show that's called The Brick. And what our philosophy is we build basketball one brick at a time. We're taking a negative concept in terms of a missed shot, which is a brick, and we're turning it into something positive. You know, there's a price for fame. I'm not famous. I'm a well-known individual, but it doesn't have to come at the cost of anything negative. You can build, you can use your platform for positivity, and I love the work that you're doing. So thank you for the time.
One love, one love. Thank you, brother, and thank you for carrying on the good fight as well. Yeah, I'm gonna let you go now so that you can enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you so much. Goodbye to you.
Thank you so much, and all the best for all of us.
Cheers. All right, that's it from Quintin, ladies and gents. Thank you so much for those of you who have tuned in and also being patient with all of these South African challenges that we're having as of late. Stage 6, bro. Stage 6. Like since when? And for how long? Anyway, let me end this before they end me. Because they're like, Lunga's talking about it. Switch him off. For those of you who are not following me just yet, on my Facebook page, you can catch me at Lunga Chuka the Energizer Funny. That is Lunga Chuka the Energizer Funny. On Instagram, I'm at Lunga Chuka. For exclusive snippets of The Price of Fame, you can go to the Instagram page, which is The Price of Fame ZA. There you'll find all the little snippets of season 1 leading into season 2 of all the guests that I've spoken to on The Price of Fame. And in the link in the bio will take you straight to my YouTube page where you like, subscribe before you even watch anything. And then you can check out all the extended interviews that I've done from season 1 going into season 2. And then if you'd like to just indulge in the audio versions of these podcasts, you can go to Apple, you can go to Spotify, as well as Anchor FM. You can find my podcast there as well, The Price of Fame. And in Anchor FM, they have this cool feature that you can actually send us some voice notes. So I'm really looking forward to you guys reaching out to me. Let me know what you think about the show. Let me know who you would like to see on the show. Or just send a shout out and we'll play it in the show. But other than that, may you have a lovely Wednesday afternoon further. I'm off, and my name is Lunga Chuka. I've been your host, and this is The Price of Fame.